There's no Kings of Comedy yet.
Yeah.
It's not on that level yet. They're at the beginning stages. See, and keep in mind, Steve is just now getting into the black thing.
Tapping back into your story.
Yes.
You would, from what I recall, you would be the reason why Bernie Mac and Steve Harvey became friends or got cool. Not
the reason. I introduced them. Raymond Lambert, before he had All Jokes Society, he had a loft. And the locals at that time was George Wilburn and Bernie Mac. And man, at that time, this was 1991. Let me tell you the fun part. This is before Def Jam. This is before Comic View. So this is before knowing who other comedians are. You've never seen these people before. Can you imagine the first time to see Bernie Mac? You've never seen. The beauty of being a comedian back in the 80s and 90s is that you always look forward to watching new people with new words to say you never heard before. Because the television didn't give you these kind of comedians. You just met them like just somewhere else. You didn't see them on television. So when you meet a Bernie Mac and a George Wilburn, they got their kind of Chicago funny. Cause Chicago funny got its own brand. Cause Chicago funny has the flashback of Mississippi. So you got that Mississippi vibe of Chicago, and the culture of that funny with Bernie Mac and George. They were joning each other. They were snapping on each other. And then me and Steve Harvey. Me and Steve was supposed to be, you know, like how Cedric and Steve are. That's supposed to be me and Steve.
Wow.
Oh yeah, me and Steve was like, man, let me tell you something. I was a Steve. Steve was my heart. I knew he was going to be famous. I said, that's the next Richard Pryor.
Wow.
Because Steve is just homemade funny. Steve doesn't try. Steve is just funny. Me and Steve was doing a show. Raymond had me and Steve do a show. We both had standing ovations. This is when Steve had the hole in his head, you know, because Steve had that fried tuck, you know, and Steve had a hole in his ass, bro. Steve had a coffee cake head. Like if Steve did a profile, you could put a coffee cake on that motherfucker. Steve Harvey and Bernie, we did a show. Me and Steve did a show together, standing ovations, and Bernie did a guest spot, and Bernie was just visiting, and then we went backstage, and I knew Bernie already.
Okay.
So I said, Bernie, this is Steve Harvey. This is a bad motherfucker to another bad motherfucker.
Okay.
They said, what's happening? And that's how they met.
Bernie and Steve.
That's how they met in Chicago at Raymond Lambert's place, or before it became All Jokes Aside.
Right.
It was All Jokes Aside, but before it became the club, we were at the loft.
Was it an instant connection between them two?
Not yet, but they were. You could see the comedy vibe connection. It was nice. You know, they just meeting. You don't know.
Cause you know when two competitors.
They're not even competing, because no one's tripping yet. This is all new. This is a loft. Raymond just went and got like an event place and set up a comedy thing. It wasn't a club yet.
Gotcha.
It wasn't a club yet. And people just came. They didn't know who Steve was. There was no name. He was promoting comedy.
Got you.
It's a new, see, this is deep.
What year was this?
1991.
Okay.
See, comedy was the draw, not the name. Black comedy was. Ooh, black comedy, we're going, because nobody's never seen it before. So Michael Williams was doing it in Atlanta in 1990. Robin Harris had died the next month because Robin was supposed to come. The reason why the Comedy Act Theater was big because Robin was the hook. When he did House Party, what did it was House Party and Robert Townsend's Partners in Crime. Robin was the hook. So everybody knew Robin was from the Comedy Act Theater in Los Angeles.
Gotcha, so he had his name.
Right, that was the hook. Just like Ronald McDonald is the hook for McDonald's, Robin Harris was the hook for Comedy Act Theater. So when the Comedy Act Theater came to Atlanta, it already had a buzz. And then you had Spelman, you had Morehouse, you had the Black Elite. I mean, you had, oh man, you had the beautiful people there. You remember the movie Boomerang? with Eddie Murphy,
sure.
that was the black people at that time.
Gotcha.
This is before hip hop culture took over with the pants sagging and everything.
Now, when Steve and Bernie met, what kind of happened in those moments? They just dapped each other up? And...
No, it was nothing. It was they haven't started yet. They just met.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is the first time we're talking 91. So you're talking, it hasn't gotten there yet. There's no competition. They're doing their thing.
Yeah.
There's no Kings of Comedy yet.
Yeah.
It's not on that level yet. They're at the beginning stages. See, and keep in mind, Steve is just now getting into the black thing. The black thing is just happening. See, Steve also, like Chris Rock, Steve is from the white clubs. Steve is from the white clubs. Steve's inspiration on the road was J. Anthony Brown. Because J. Anthony Brown at that time was J. Anthony Brown in the 80s was the hottest working only black comedian in the South like him.
Okay.
There was nobody else. There was not many people, so everything was fresh. Everything was fresh. So when you ask me about Steve Harvey and Bernie, they met and everything, but there's nothing because, okay, when Steve goes back to where he comes from, Bernie's home, they meet, I mean, they travel. Yeah. But until Def Jam comes, that's when, you know, you put shows together, that's when other things happen, because when you're doing the concerts, I think where you're getting at, when it came time to, after Def Jam, now it's time to go on the road, then here comes the shit. Who closes the show? Gotcha. But we haven't gotten there yet.
Gotcha.
Right, but that comes afterwards. That's after Def Jam, and that's after things get big. People started getting big around 94.
And from there. So at one point, just to kind of lay this up, at one point comedy was, y'all was just having fun.
Yes. Yes.
And then we start making money.
Yes.
We start getting opportunities.
Yes.
Everything now I'm changes. Looking at the guy that I was just he ha ha with. I'm looking at him as a competitor. Yeah,
man, y'all been hanging out, going to the Waffle House, and you know, smoking weed together, doing shit, hanging out, spend the night. Now everything, you know, then after you do television and you get that agent, it's a wrap.